Yes, this is now the 4th episode in my very special series of podcasts this week, all focusing on the Millions Missing Emmy Action Network's campaign surrounding Emmy and, of course, Emmy Association's Emmy Awareness Week. I've been honing in on subjects and issues surrounding Emmy which aren't often, in my opinion, getting the coverage they deserve. And today's guest is no exception to that rule. She is a mother, activist, campaigner and very vocal voice on the issues surrounding class with regards to disability and specifically chronic illness. She is also someone who is living with more diseases, illnesses and conditions than you have fingers and thumbs. I should also add as a disclaimer, she is also my partner in crime. It is the gorgeous, the fabulous Nicola Jeffery is on the Topple Uncaged podcast today. Except she's not. She's not on here partly because I'm the journalist and the broadcaster, therefore it's my job to have a way with words. But moreover, she's not doing this interview because, in all honesty, she is now so sick of having to repeat her life story every time she meets someone new. It's ended up becoming highly distressing for her at times. And when you look back at her life until this point, you'll understand why. Why do I think Nicola's story is so important? Because I believe it represents the stories of thousands and thousands of working class women in this country who have been subjected to abuse, medical and professional misogyny, and dismissed by the system. And their voices, however loud they shout, are ignored by most people. They're ignored by charities, campaign groups, politicians, and institutions of the state. Why are they ignored? Because they are working class. It is rampant classism. The only voices we ever get to hear are those of white, middle-class people with financial and educational means behind them. Nicola feels like she can shout as loud as she can, and still people do not listen to her. And I believe she's representative of thousands of women in this country. And I believe she's representative of millions of women in this country who are probably chronically ill, living with things like ME and Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, and who can't even get as far as a diagnosis due to the rampant classism that exists. Their voices need to be heard, and quickly. So that's why I'm telling you Nicola's story today. To many, her medical journey is probably not that out of the ordinary. She was born in 1986. Doctors told her mother she had growing pains as a child. She was so flexible that she was highly gifted at karate by the age of 11, and, shock horror, lo and behold, a hypermobile Ehlers-Danlos syndrome was diagnosed when she was 32. Ehlers-Danlos syndrome being a condition of the connective tissue, which on the surface makes you hypermobile, makes everything flexible and what used to be called double jointedness, but internally it also affects all your organs, all your tissues in your body, your blood vessels, your nerves, every single part of your system is affected. But this story of growing pains, being flexible, is pretty run-of-the-mill in terms of EDS. Anyone listening who understands the Ehlers-Danlos syndromes will probably agree. However, it is not just simple as EDS. To get to this point of a hypermobile EDS diagnosis, Nicola has been subject to what can only be described as abuse by the medical profession, government agencies, and even some people closest to her. Why? In my opinion and in hers, because she is a working class woman brought up on a council estate in a family who were on and off benefits. For example, when she was a child, her mother's concerns about her health were dismissed by middle-class medical professionals as essentially being from an ignorant woman obviously not knowing what she's talking about, because her mum was working class and from a council estate. Her extreme hormonal fluctuations as a teenager, again recognised by her mother, were solved by medical professionals just shoving her on the contraceptive pill at the age of 13. Her physical deterioration after having firstly meningitis at age 11, pityriasis rosea age 12, glandular fever age 16, and then the birth of her first child age 20 were completely ignored. She was a single mum on benefits, and very ill. So she went to social services for help because she felt she wasn't physically able to look after her son in the best way she wanted to. The result of this? They sectioned her under the Mental Health Act as they didn't believe she was actually ill. but she was subsequently released with no mental health diagnosis. Her interactions with social services have also been blighted by abuse and discrimination. One social worker asked her what ethnic need she could offer her dual heritage son. She was told by a Department for Work and Pensions advisor that they didn't believe her son was hers. She was informed by numerous doctors over the years that her symptoms were all in her head. Along with all of this came homelessness, a 2-year court battle for custody of her son, hate crime, discrimination and rampant medical and institutional misogyny. Then, in 2010, a fibromyalgia diagnosis came along, as did polycystic ovary syndrome and tonic-clonic seizures. But it took Nicola another 9 years to reach the point she is at now. So, what is Nicola living with? She currently has diagnoses of hypermobile EDS, myalgic encephalomyelitis, commonly known as ME, postural orthostatic tachycardia syndrome, known as POTS. She has bone deformations in her left foot and left leg shortness. She has polycystic ovary syndrome, temporomandibular joint dysfunction, craniocervical instability, atlaxoanteal instability, clinical hypertension, megaloblastic anemia, peripheral neuropathy, chronotropic intolerance, and non-epileptic tonic-clonic seizures with what look like focal aware seizure prodromal incidents. Oh, and by the way, throughout all of that, despite her being sectioned, there's still no mental health diagnosis, contrary to what countless medical professionals, government agencies, family and friends would like you to believe. One of the most damning aspects of Nicola's story is that all these diagnoses have come since we met back in 2016. It's as if because of her background, because she was working class with a broad South London accent, because she was on benefits, and because she had a history of standing up for herself to medical professionals, no one was taking her seriously. Then suddenly I walk in with, in the way Nicola often describes, a cock and a pair of balls between my legs, and I don't speak with a broad accent of any description, and I can use long words because I'm a journalist. Suddenly, medical professionals take all of this very seriously, and we've seen some of the top consultants in the NHS in this country, and have also seen many top people privately. So now, we're trying to get her as well as possible. She's been subject to more testing to mainly prove her ME than I care to mention. It is literally an endless merry-go-round of new information at the moment, some of which I will be publishing, some of which is extremely complicated. I have to say, as a journalist, I find it hard to deal with getting my head around this plethora of medical terminology, pages and pages of reports, and constant re-diagnoses or new diagnoses. It's also bloody hard to live with as well. She's on an extremely intensive regime of supplements. Her 13 conditions have left her practically bedbound for at least 3/4 of the week. For example, today, I'm recording this on Friday, I've recorded this after she's already had 2 focal aware seizures which have left her exhausted. She maybe, on a good week, has 1 day where she can actually leave the house. That is the state that these 13 conditions, and predominantly the ME and the craniocervical and atlantoaxial instabilities, I believe, have left her in. Nicola's also spent an awful lot of time raising awareness for other campaigns, organisations and groups in this country. Sadly, that doesn't seem to be reciprocated, because very few of these groups bother to support her when she needs them to raise awareness of the issues she lives with. And trust me, none of these activists ever come and knock our door to see how she is either. But oddly enough, they're also very quick to contact Nicola when they want me and my blue tick, want an article writing, want an issue promoting. Oddly enough, they're never interested in what she has to say. Clearly, Nicola's ME, EDS, and the 11 other illnesses, diseases and conditions she lives with are not disabling enough for some groups. It's sadly a cause for concern that a lot of groups still believe that chronic illness and invisible illnesses are still psychological, which ultimately, sadly, just feeds into the government, state and corporate agenda surrounding these diseases and deficiencies. As a journalist and also as a partner, this is extremely hard for me to deal with. For Nicola, it's nearly broken her. She's tired. I know she's tired. I can see it in her face. I can hear it in her voice. She's tired of having to explain her illnesses. She is tired of having to explain to people that she is ill at all. She's tired of people close to her still telling her to effectively shut up about it. She's tired of having to fight for things which should be standard to someone with her complications and her number of conditions. She's tired of being dismissed by people around her, people in government agencies, and still some medical professionals, despite all the overwhelming evidence that can be presented to them. She's also tired of talking about it. So, it's left to me to do the talking, the explaining, and the investigating. And that is the most damning part of this all. For a young, articulate and intelligent woman to have been subjected to so much institutionalised abuse, misogyny and discrimination because of her social class and background, and yet be left feeling that she wants me, a white man who doesn't speak with an accent and can write a bit, to now speak on her behalf? That's the most heartbreaking part of all, that ultimately she has been abused so much that she is now left feeling almost powerless to continue fighting this, and that the epitome of everything that's wrong with society, masculinity and patriarchy, is what is left for her as an option to address all this, in me. The system and society have almost broken her. She is literally now a shell of who she once was. And that ultimately, listeners, is not due to her illness. That is due to the horrible world in which we live. Thank you for listening on behalf of both me and Nicola, and I will see you again very soon.